Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to HR Week 2021. And again, if you've just joined us, welcome to halfway through or towards the end of our first day. Lots of ideas, suggestions, insights, debates, conversations, lots of resources to help you really tackle the HR strategies, rethink your HR strategies and move forward, certainly as a professional and as a company as well. I will ask the same question I asked a little bit earlier on. It's always good and lovely to really know who's with us. There are lots of people who are joining us right now at the moment with this session, also walking around, strolling around our HR venue as well, around the format, around looking at all the different things and ideas and insights they can actually pick up as well. So we would love to know who you are and where you are. So in the chat, just let us know where you are. Let us know how you're doing. Let us know what you think of the program so far. Love to hear your comments. Pop it down in the chat and we'll see how far and wide our event is actually moving forward as well. Right. If I said to you, if it's possible to take your problem solving and HR partnering to a higher level, I'm sure you'd say, yes, you'd like to do that. But if I said to you, you could do that with one subtle change, I'm sure your ears would prick up and you'd say to yourself, I'm in for that. I'd love to know. Well, the next session, hopefully, we'll find out more about that and how everybody can actually take benefit from that as well. It's all about curiosity and seeing if that could actually be the hidden superpower we all actually own. Two people who are going to delve into this idea itself right now. I'm going to invite them to our virtual event right now on the screen. So we have a global VP of HR from Fluke Health Solutions, Anna Stojanovic. Anna, are you there?
Hi, Peter. I'm
Hello,
here.
Anna.
Can you hear
Hi.
me?
I can hear you. I can see you. Looking great.
Thank
Lovely
you. So
room wherever you are. Where are you right now, Anna?
I'm in Portland. It's 6 a.m. I'm just waking
No
up.
way. Oh, I must say, Anna, you are looking great for someone who. Well, no, you look great anyway, but particularly right now, so early in the morning, you're doing well, better than I am, and it's almost half the day gone. Right.
You're doing fantastic.
I'm going to
Thank
hand it
you.
over to you now. I'll hand it over to you now. And also remember at the end, if we have questions that have come through, I'll pop back in and have a little chat and pose those questions to you both. Okay, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. As Peter said, my name is Anna Stojanovic, and it is my immense pleasure to introduce today's speaker that I'm going to be asking some questions to. Her name is Elise Foster. She is an author, executive coach, and speaker with a deep passion to helping her clients make sustainable, lasting changes. An engineer by training, she has spent many years in leadership coaching and is currently president and leadership potential consulting with clients like AT&T, GE, and Arizona State University. And I just gotta say, we gotta watch our time, Elise, because every time you and I spoke, we went half an hour more, I think, at least. So welcome. Such a pleasure to be with you.
So good to be with you again, Anna. And I will be watching the clock and hope you'll help me do the same. Although I have a feeling we might go in a lot of new directions today. So let's see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, sounds great. So maybe we just jump right in, okay? If that's okay with you, and then we're gonna have some fun along the way. So, in all of our conversations, I know you're very passionate, and Peter actually mentioned that, about curiosity and impact that the adequate framing of questions can have. So now I'm curious, okay, talking about curiosity. Why do you think this is important?
Yeah, it's a great question, Anna. And I think curiosity is innate in every one of us. And it's possibly one of the least used abilities that we have as humans. When our kids are young, we're impressed as they question to understand the world around them. And then something happens right around the time kids get to school. Curiosity tends to drop off. Now, I'm not saying school's doing this to our kids, but we learn really early in life that answers are prized over questions. So knowing and having the answers becomes this highly rated currency. And we see it repeatedly. The people with the answers, they get the rewards, whether that's top honors in school, the best projects at work, promotions. These things almost always, they come by having the answers. The problem right now, though, is that the issues we face today are more complex than they were even 6 months ago, let alone 10 years ago. So think about onboarding and benefits. What was once a best practice for employee retention, the answer, if you will, might be a losing strategy in a post-pandemic world. So as the complexity increases, my sense is that relying on what we know, or more aptly put, what we think we know, is insufficient. And it's really important and critical to approach today's challenges with curiosity. Asking the questions that are going to challenge assumptions and push organizations to innovate in a constantly changing environment where it's becoming increasingly difficult to predict the final destination. In the leaders that I coach, one of the biggest obstacles I see they face is how out of practice they are asking questions. They have been tapped and relied on for answers for so long. And so it feels really foreign to ask questions. And in the face of this discomfort, they often find it easier to default to giving answers or asking questions with a predefined answer in mind. And that reminds me of this beautiful thought that I recently came by Tina Seelig at Stanford. And she says, questions are the frames into which our answers fall. Think about that for a second. It highlights for me just how influential our underlying mindset is when it comes to questioning. And so without curiosity, our questions are more likely simply suggestions posing as questions. And so for the leaders and the HR professionals on this call, I wonder and invite them to wonder for themselves, where might they be framing questions that shut down new directions because they're predefining a destination? In this rapidly changing, thank you.
Yeah.
I just, one last piece, I think, is just to remind ourselves of how rapidly things are changing. And without having curiosity fueling our work, I think, where we are constantly sitting in this space of what if and how might we, I think we risk over indexing on this currency that's losing value. And being curious, it really helps us create a bit of distance between what we know and what we think we know, so we can better imagine the possibilities.
That's so wonderful. And I have to tell you, you always help me through, like, your answers are always applicable to whatever I'm currently facing, right? And so last time we spoke, you helped me with a work issue that I was dealing with. You sort of, with your answers, coach me through it. Now I'm thinking, like, when I ask my kids questions, I'm actually leading them to destination. Like, I am never... So I'm going to rethink my weekend and maybe adjust my style a little bit more. So let's explore that a bit further with maybe like a little bit of a case study, right? So when we think about HR professionals, right, as many on this beautiful audience are, so we often deal with several stakeholders. And I think, you and I discussed my situation from a couple of weeks ago. And each of them have their own agenda, right? And each of them are convinced that they're right. And so sometimes it can feel for us that we're caught in this crossfire. And so how do we prevent from getting into that? And then how do we deal with that scenario once we get in there?
Yeah, I mean, at first, like, what an uncomfortable place to be, where you're caught between two people who are stuck in their own views. And then, of course, you have your own views. You maybe don't have a strong view, but you have experience and you have information that you want to bring to the table. I think, the first thing is doing a little bit of what I already hear you doing, which is starting to notice and recognize the kinds of questions you're asking. And are you asking questions that are leading in a particular way, or are you creating space? I think, when I think about standing between stakeholders with strong views, I find myself sometimes stuck in a place of feeling like I owe them an answer, a response, a way to help them get unstuck. And I want to take action, maybe make a call, give a directive. And this becomes really problematic when each of the stakeholders has important views on the issue. We can sometimes shortchange hearing those views and really understanding them. And so my best recommendation here is really to think about how you can tune into the conversation differently. I find that leaders tend to listen in one of two ways. They either want to win or they want to fix the situation. And when we're listening to win, we essentially kind of respond in a way that rejects the other person's thinking. So think about it can be really from a generous, kind place too, by the way. Think about the simplest kind of thing. An employee comes to you frustrated after a presentation they've just given, and we say, oh, don't worry about it. I'm sure you did great. We're essentially listening to fix, make the problem go away, make them feel better about the thing. And then you've got this space of listening to fix where we want to offer a solution. So in the case of the person who had a difficult presentation, we're going, well, what do you think went wrong? So we could cleverly come in and save the day with well, next time, maybe you ought to try. And when we're caught in the crossfire, one of the best things you can do is try to abandon the listening to fix and listening to win. And of course, those thoughts are going to come to you, but the more lightly you can hold them, the more possibility you have to listen, to learn, and understand, where you take an intentional approach to notice the differences between how you and the others are making sense of the situation. And then asking questions to better understand the other's perspectives. So in the case we were talking about, how is it that it makes, one leader, it makes really good sense for them to go in this direction that seems like the polar opposite of this other leader. And how is it that their direction makes really good sense too? So how do we then also start to look at what seems to be at stake for each of these stakeholders if we go in one direction or another? And the more you understand those, you have a better opportunity as the person caught in the middle of this to help design collaborative solutions that meet all of the stakeholder needs, or as many as possible, knowing that there are always unmet needs in the world. Your ability, though, to listen to learn is directly proportional to your curiosity about each of those stakeholders' perspectives. So when we're sure of our position, or we have this drive to want to take action, or our instinct to win or fix gets in the way, it trumps our ability to really understand. So injecting that dose of curiosity can really serve you in these situations.
And what I find interesting there, Elise, is that we were so rewarded for winning and fixing, right? So for those two behaviors, so when you think about leaders, right, they got to leadership position because those are the behaviors that they exemplified. Mm-hmm. And so they embody it, and rightfully so, in many other situations, in the situations like you're talking about. And I have to tell you, folks, like when Elise helped me with my situation, it was really, I was sort of stuck in between, mostly leaning towards one solution. I thought that solution was better. And then what she helped me realize, and it really works, is just be curious about both solutions. So don't have your preconceived notions, don't go into it like strong-willed, even if the solution that you're favoring, right, at the end, but just kind of curiosity, right? Like as if you don't know anything about the organization. And so it really unstuck the situation, it unstuck the leaders, it helped them feel heard, and eventually we got to the solution that I preferred. But anyway, that's not the point. that wasn't yeah. So I heard you say earlier, and I know you and I spoke about it in our pre-calls as well, that questions are oftentimes framed by destination rather than direction. So that's a phrase that I wrote on my sticky. I love that. And so can you explain to us, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, and it's, what you were just describing is easier said than done. We have these preconceived notions, we hear a thing, and we have a direction, a destination we want to get to. We want to implement this solution. And this area of kind of pointing in a to a destination rather than a direction is one of my personal weaknesses. And just thinking about this weekend, you were talking earlier about your kids and rethinking your questions for the weekend. This is something I'm constantly working on. And for those of you who, whether it's kids, friends, family, experimenting at home is a really great place to try on more curiosity. Like some of you.
It can backfire, by the way.
It totally can backfire. I guarantee you. I've had it backfire, and in
Me
just
too.
a moment, you'll hear a little more about that. So I'm wired for problem solving, moving quickly, and it almost seems like there's just never time for a different approach. And so that often drives me to frame up questions with a fairly specific solution or expectation in mind, a destination, if you will. And this is especially true when I've made an assumption that the person I'm dealing with maybe won't figure it out the way I want them to, or they maybe will struggle to figure it out. And the risk in doing this, though, is that we inadvertently create teams of people who think like us. Or worse, they begin to question their own abilities, their own intelligence. And so rather than cultivating and leveraging the diverse perspectives that are shown to produce better outcomes, we end up shutting them down. And so, what does this sound like? It can take a lot of forms, and I'll share this specific form it took when I got caught up this weekend. With out-of-town guests coming in, my daughter's room was a certifiable disaster. Her room also doubles as the guest room. She understood the imperative to get a room cleaned this weekend. And after a lazy Sunday, I kind of saw her goofing off all day. I checked in with her to see how things were going, right? Seems simple enough and, kind of benign. The trouble started, though, when I held this core assumption that she hadn't done anything. And so I looked at her and I said, "Hey, is your room done yet?" Now, the question gets to the point, but it creates a barrier for her to really engage and want to respond. If she's not ready, she faces judgment. And even if she is ready, it can create a little bit of an awkward, "See, I told you so, Mom," kind of conversation. A different question that sounds more like, "How's your room coming?" creates space. Space for me to congratulate her and recognize the work that she's done. Space for her to ask for help if she needs it. We start to build trust in this relationship because whether she's lifted a finger or not, my question implies that she's been working on it. Now, if we take this into the work world, when you have a team member tackling a tough project for the first time, "Is it done yet?" carries an implication that's likely to cause the person to question their own abilities. Should it be done by now? I'm having a hard time with this. What do I do here? And they're maybe going to come right back with, "Yes, absolutely, I'm almost there," whether they are feeling confident or not. And so when you point in the direction of progress instead of the destination of completion and ask a question like, "Hey, how's it coming?" you invite them to share their full experience, opening up new possibilities for you to lend some thinking, possibilities to have them, offer up where they might be needing support or just some, opportunity to brainstorm together. So I think it's really important for us to reframe questions in a way that point in this direction rather than to a particular destination.
That's, oh my God, that's fantastic. And I was just thinking, how do we practice that more? What are the questions that right? And I was just thinking about the question that you just asked, right? Is it done yet, right? Us as bosses asking that to our people. Well, just apply it to yourself. The moment you said, "Is it done yet?" I'm thinking of my boss asking me that, and I cringed. I'm like, I'm not gonna respond to that. That's a provocation, right? It creates this barrier immediately, unnecessarily so, right? I think we have a question from the audience, and then I'm gonna go back to my questions because I want to ask you all of this stuff. What are the different ways and channels that you would suggest for listening to employees in one organization?
So can you just say that one more time? What are the ways to listen?
Yes, that you would suggest for listening to employees in an organization.
I think you just said it in a way around and something that was alluded to in the introduction. It's really subtle, the difference. of is it done yet or how is it coming? It's how do we listen with curiosity and with assuming that everyone here, all of your employees are here to show up and do the very best work. And when they're not, being curious about what part of that you own and what part of that do they own. And so I think it is, I guess, I'm thinking most about listening with curiosity and wondering, and this is kind of alluding to a little bit of what I think everybody in the world needs a little bit of now, is when you're struggling to listen, check in with yourself, check in with your own understanding. Like, what do I believe here? How do I know I'm right? And how might I actually be wrong about this thing? And carrying those 3 questions with you, I hope will open up a little bit of space for you to hold what you know just a little bit more lightly so you can create an opening for people to engage in a way that you can really, truly hear them.
Fantastic. And I would just add from just HR perspective, think about applying to what Elise is saying to your employee engagement survey. Like, how are you asking those questions? Are those directional questions, or you are taking them to a certain destination? When you have your one-on-ones, like right now, we are just doing at our organization, just these check-ins, pick up a phone and just check in how a person is doing, right? Like, hey, how is it going? What's on your mind, right? And just creating that space. So some of the channels, I would say that would be it. Yeah.
And Anna, you just reminded me of 2 things that can happen. So you talked about employee engagement surveys. When you get the data back and you read it and they say a thing that flies in the face of this great policy that you implemented to solve that very problem, it can churn up in us this instinct of like, we did that and we want to defend our solution. That goes into that space of listening to win or listening to fix. And how do we listen to understand, okay, we had the solution we implemented. They are seeing something differently. How can I better understand what they're seeing? And this ties to a client actually who just got their engagement survey results back and really took great offense to, was like really working on wanting to open up spaces for her team to contribute. And one of the subtle shifts she made in her check-in, her one-on-ones with people, to open up a different kind of space instead of saying, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? Because that conversation, was not a conversation she ever wanted to have. So she really wasn't listening anyway. She started using the question, how are you coming into today? And then that gave people an opportunity to just go, I just got off this awful call, or I just got off this really great call, and gave them a moment to kind of just reset and get into the space. So it's just another way to, again, create space, remove obstacles for people to participate.
Love it. Love it. So what do you believe as HR community we need the most right now?
Besides a break?
Great. Yes.
I think that the HR community needs what a lot of us need right now in this highly charged, kind of high stakes environments that we're living and playing in. And it's really a moment to pause and get curious about our own thinking, understanding what's driving us and motivating us, so we can be even better business partners. And you'll maybe see in the chat, I hope they're going to get this out there. There's a worksheet that I put together that really centers around this kind of core thinking routine that helps us re-engage and reconnect with our curiosity. And it's called See, Think, Wonder. It sounds super simple, but it's like the gateway to asking better questions. It's setting the stage for, what do I see in this situation? Just the observable facts. And then inviting you to bring in your own assumptions, your own sense making around it. What do I think about the things I see? And then taking it that step further to go, all right, well, what do I wonder about? So in the case of the 2 leaders you mentioned, how can these leaders see things so differently? How do you get in retune to that curiosity so that you can engage in a way that creates space for everybody to contribute in a new kind of way? Because when you create distance from your own beliefs and bring in that curiosity and turn it into questions, you create a space for productive dialogue as opposed to just kind of looking at things at face value. And when you get at that underlying thinking, it gives everyone a leg up to find better solutions. These curiosity-filled questions, they give you an opportunity to fundamentally change the game.
Well, I have to say, I wonder now if our time is up, which I think.
Well, yeah, it certainly is. It certainly, but hey, it's been, listen, just for me listening to this conversation, lots of food for thought. And it reminds me a lot of the idea of judgment, of prejudgment. When we see something, when we hear something, when we hear often something, maybe feedback, which we don't necessarily instinctively like to hear, sometimes we've just got to kind of stop, think about it, because what we feel might not actually be the truth. So it's good to kind of, and I love the idea of making space just for a moment or two. That gives you time to think and question everything. So when you question it, that's almost an affirmation that you don't know everything. So great to hear lots of sound bites that have come out today in today's conversation. All I'm going to say now is thank you so much to both of you, Elise and Anna. Anna, you can go back to bed now and back to your warm, cozy bed. If I can see, it's probably what you're going to do right now.
Oh, yeah.
Elise, what time is it where you are, by the way?
It is mid-morning, about 10 a.m. For me here in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, that sounds a lot better. But hey, it's lovely to hear from both of you. And again, viewers, I'm sure you want to probably reach out to Anna or Elise, link up on LinkedIn, for example, and maybe take that conversation further as well. Elise and Anna, thank you so much, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Right. We move on now. In just a couple of minutes, we move on to a panel discussion, a healthy panel discussion, all about playing the strategic HR game. Now, this is a kind of theme that we've had throughout the day and throughout the week as well. But this debate, this healthy discussion, hopefully we'll dig a little bit deeper. And by the end of it, we'll have some concrete answers we can use and that are relevant for us and naturally our company as well. So join you in about a minute and a half for our next session of HR Week 2021.